think that employment is important for autistic people in really the same way that it's important for anyone. It gives them a sense of value in themselves. It occupies their time. It has opportunities for socialisation, for personal growth, and obviously financially. If you're not in employment, then there can be real issues with your quality of life because of that. So I think it's important for lots and lots of reasons. There have been times when I haven't been able to sustain employment and my mental health has suffered as a result of being quite isolated and feeling a sense of a lack of value in myself because of that, feeling like I'm not contributing in a worthwhile way to society. And then obviously the financial pressures can mount up quite quickly, particularly if you're in a country like the UK at the moment where the sort of welfare system is not the most robust and reliable for autistic people and other people with disabilities. So there are a lot of factors, but really in the same way that it's important for anyone, but it's important that it is the right employment. I think that autistic people have an awful lot to offer in general, and they have a lot of skills they can bring to the workforce, and often we see employing people with disabilities almost as an act of charity, and it really isn't, because if you support autistic people or disabled people to excel, then they may be the most loyal, hardworking, innovative sometimes employees that you may have. Not everyone is the same, but certainly a lot of autistic people have a really keen eye for detail. They're very fastidious in their work ethic, and they may do very, very well. And certainly autistic people have driven innovation and inventiveness, so it is about being willing to look outside the box a little bit. Often people say that we're very rigid in our thinking, and we can be sometimes. We need our routines and that sense of security. But in other ways, if we see something that isn't working, we're willing to say so. And that can be a real asset for employers, I think. And it really benefits the whole economy to support autistic people into employment. And often there'll be an impact that carers can't work as well. So doing that really isn't charity, it's investment. So besides the sort of value and self-worth it gives people, there's a financial payback to that initial investment as well. So it's really, really important, I think. And the other thing is thinking about environments, workplace environments, because they can have a massive impact on somebody's ability to function well. So the way that the lighting is, the noises, all of that can set someone up for a good day or a bad day. I think that we need training that goes beyond awareness about autism. We need understanding throughout society, and particularly in a workplace. That's important. Kindness and compassion for fellow human beings goes a long way though. I think that it's interesting, and going forward a little bit when we talk about women as well, there's some research that shows that actually women are less likely to apply for a job where they meet all of the essential criteria in the sort of specification for applying. Whereas men are more likely to apply even if they don't meet one or two of them, so they'll shoot a bit higher. And for autistic women in particular, they are often very much perfectionists. So they may feel like they need to be very overqualified to apply for a job. And then the sort of recruitment procedures can be an issue. So the way that things are advertised, the nerves about an interview situation, even down to not knowing what the building is going to look like, travelling there. And when you go on to sort of higher levels of employment, you might be faced with a panel interview, and you may not have prepared the questions and answers in advance. So it's a lot of uncertainty, which is really difficult for autistic people. And then they may struggle with the processing time and formulating their answers and become overwhelmed. And sometimes when we become overwhelmed, we lose our verbal ability and we become sort of reactively mute. So in an interview situation, that could really damage your chances of presenting your best self when you might actually be very, very good for the role, but that situation might not work. Now, that's not true for everyone. For me, I've always done really well in interviews. I seem to work well in that situation, but then it's maintaining that. So I think that when it comes to maintaining employment, again, those standards that we set ourselves, speaking from personal experience, as an autistic woman, I set myself very high standards. And it's quite difficult to meet those. So perfectionism can be good because it can push you to do well. But if you're sort of getting 98% on a test and only thinking about the 2% you got wrong, then that causes a lot of problems. And what it can mean is that you end up doing overtime, extra work in an effort to make everything perfect. Down to the point that in my role, when I do PowerPoints, I'll spend hours formatting the fonts, the colours, you know, in a way that somebody else who is very busy might say, that's not as important. As long as I've got all of the information there, it's fine. So that can cause a lot of issues. And if you've masked or camouflaged in the interview, which a lot of people might do, then you're having to maintain that mask throughout employment, which can be really, really difficult. And living up to those very high standards you've set, both on yourself and what you've presented to people when you've been wearing that mask. So when they slip, it looks like you're not trying as hard. So it's really difficult. I think there are. I think that for myself, again, because I had periods of ill health, so my CV had gaps where I'd been unwell, and that caused a lot of issues in getting back into work and people being unwilling to hire me, worrying that I might not be able to sustain the role. And I think that people would be more willing perhaps to offer promotion and responsibility to people they feel are really reliable and that might not have issues with ill health and things like that. And a lot of autistic people have lots of coexisting conditions, whether they're mental health, autoimmune conditions, all those kinds of things that can impact your ability to work. So that could affect your CV and then your professional development, and also the social aspect. So it can be that there is a very social element in getting ahead. And although we strive to kind of avoid that kind of discrimination, if you are engaging and networking with people regularly, going out for meals with the team, meeting clients, then you're going to have more opportunities for professional growth. And an autistic person may be less willing perhaps to fight for a higher wage, a promotion, a training opportunity, because they feel perhaps they don't deserve it, or they don't know how to broach the subject and they think it might be rude. So there are a lot of issues there that might affect your ability to move upwards. We know now that many autistic women have gone undiagnosed. We're far more likely to diagnose men than we are women, and that can have implications for support. So whether it is support in health, social care, in sort of mental health, and in workplace support and adjustments. For myself, I didn't know that I was autistic. I didn't know what adjustments I might need, so there was no way I could suggest anything to my employers. I didn't know, and that's the case for a lot of autistic women, certainly. And I think that there are also social differences. So the way that we socialise women and men as well is different. And I think that the pressures on women now to run a home, be the perfect parent, all the emotional labour of the household, those kind of social expectations on top of fulfilling a full-time role, and you've got this perfectionism, it can be really, really hard to keep all of that going. I think women are more likely to mask and camouflage, we think, and that comes with a real strain on your mental health. It comes with a real strain on fatigue and what we call burnout. So when you've been masking and camouflaging for a long time, it takes such a toll that you can end up having a sort of breakdown. For me, that's happened multiple times. So I've worked really, really hard, and then I've cut down all my social demands. I've cut down everything except for work, really, to the point then that I am so burnt out. I can barely communicate. I can't leave the house. My anxiety is massive. And I think that happens for a lot of autistic women as well. So that there are so many things I could probably say about that. It's a really complicated area. But I do think there are differences, and I think that step one is research on what does autism look like in women, and we have to be careful not to generalise or gender autism because everyone is different. Not all women present that way, and not all men would present in a different way. So there are overlaps, but certainly our research and understanding of autism has evolved around cisgender straight white males, really, and we've missed women, we've missed non-binary and transgender, we've missed people with different sexualities and different ethnic backgrounds. So we need to do a lot of work there, and then that needs to inform diagnosis and support, including in education and the workplace. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. I think that there are a lot of things we need to do to overcome inequality, and it has to be not just in one area of your life. So I talk a lot about the World Health Organization's wider determinants of health. It's like a rainbow that shows what you need for overall well-being. So, you know, you need adequate housing, nutrition, community inclusion, employment, education, all of that. And it's like dominoes, when you pull one out, they all go. And I think that it starts with early diagnosis and support. It starts with the right education. And often for people that are termed high functioning autistic, they get a lot of their social and emotional needs overlooked because they're academically able. And there aren't really a lot of educational placements that meet that need. And so, like in my case, I was out of school for 18 months very unwell, and I fell behind even though I was quite capable intellectually. And I left school with 6 GCSEs, and then I went to college, and I ended up leaving college before I did my A-levels, and all of that then contributes to your transition to adulthood, your self-worth, and your ability to find and maintain appropriate employment, I think. So we need to start very, very early on, and we need to look at changes across health, social care, education, employment, all of it really. Yeah, my number one kind of recommendation for autistic people and their families when they're going through education and they're transitioning into adulthood and employment is forget society's expectations. So we have a timeline. It's almost like a checklist, okay? So you go to school, you get your GCSEs in the UK, you go to college, you get your A-levels, you go to university, you get your degree, finish by age 21, maybe you go on to further education again, maybe you get a job, then maybe you get married and you have children, and it's like a checklist. Autistic people may not develop at the same rate in the same order. So often, you know, we may have accelerated sort of intellectual development, we may have slower social and emotional development, we may have lots of other issues. So if we don't do our GCSEs until we're 20, then we don't do them until we're 20. If we need to do 5 one year and 5 the next year rather than 10 all at once, then that's what we need to do. And if we need to work flexibly, if we need to spend a lot of time getting work experience, if we need to work part-time, if we need to do part remote working to help sustain that, then we need to not worry so much about the societal expectations. And that starts really, really early on, down to toileting, sleeping, the way that you eat, you know, from toddlers onwards, or they're not doing it on the right timeline. And we often don't fit into that timeline, but actually that stigma and that judgment has a big impact on the autistic child and adult and their family. And that's a lot of pressure that we really don't need. We just need to chip away and realise that what might look like small achievements to other people might be massive achievements for us. So I think that is the main thing. Just keep moving forward at whatever rate it might be, and try not to be too disheartened and comparing yourself to societal expectations.